So, under much pressure from a few friends, I guess here I am making my brew guide. Or, it's not a brew guide, but whatever. I would be really crappy at making a brew guide. But what I do want to do is just sort of walk through how I make coffee or whatever. I feel like it would be pretty cool. Confession. I'm actually pretty shy, as some of you guys may know. Alright. So, doing this is kind of like a leap for me or whatever. I don't like being on things, on like Instagram or whatever. But yeah, whatever. So, to sort of start off, I want to like give my thoughts on like just brewing at home and all that kind of stuff. So when you brew at home, you set the priorities are like the objectives that you want to hit. So like, do you want something that's sort of like slow and methodical? Do you want something that's more quick and easy and to the point? Do you want something that just tastes really good? Do you not even want coffee at all? Like, you know, like these are the questions that you answer and that you sort of like do whatever. So like, I like the process, and I've always been somebody who's enjoyed more so making coffee than drinking it. So I like to be extra with everything that I can. Case in point, yeah. But yeah, so I already have some preheated water. I already ground my coffee. I use a Comandante because it's just a really good grinder. It's very consistent. Plus, you know, going back to that methodical, like, you know, the process, just the spinning and the cranking, all of that, even that's like kind of relaxing for me. Yeah, so what I'm technically doing is a V60. So I assume most of the people that follow me are like coffee people, so like I'm not really gonna like go into the ins and outs of like very elementary stuff. But the reason why I'm using an origami instead of like a traditional V60 is just because I broke mine. So like this is a very personal choice. Like you can either break yours or not. Either way, V60s are pretty cool. I do V60 because like I feel like you have more control over like just what you can do with the coffee, and you can sort of like play with a wider range of options. So like you can go finer, you can go coarser. While Kalita, like, you know, Cleaver, all those kind of things are sort of set in their ways. Yeah, so like with that said, I sort of do a pretty coarse grind for pour overs. I would say it was like, honestly, it's sort of like verging closer to like a really coarse AeroPress or like the really fine like French press. And like I sort of do that because I feel like the coffee itself, if you extract it correctly, you can get like a cleaner flavor with the coarser grind, because there's less things to be over extracted, less things to sort of clog the filters, less places for it to sort of channel. And yeah, so I mean, it's personal preference. You can of course like go really fine and like play around with like variables there. Like that's the cool thing about coffee, in my opinion. Like you can sort of do whatever you want. Like if you're bored, you can brew in a completely different way, and like, you know, it still may taste good. So yeah. After doing that, I'm actually going to reheat my water because it's probably pretty cold by now. So, yeah. So with water and like all that kind of stuff, I tend to shoot for a little bit higher, like water temp, mostly just because like using a coarser grind, like a lot of the water in the brew bed is just going to flow relatively fast. Because it's flowing faster, I want to have hotter water so that way when I reintroduce that water, it can bring the temperature up higher, as opposed to like something that's like closer to 200. Like if we want to be brewing at 200, you know, having just 200 water wouldn't necessarily bring the slurry up to 200. Like so, I typically like start off like at least start off my brew like maybe 205, 208 if it's like a relatively lighter roasted coffee. Speaking of the coffee I'm using today is coffee that we sell at East Pole, the place I work. It's a Tanzanian. It's from the Mbozi farm. I forget the rest of the information. I will look at that in a minute. But like, I think it's a relatively lighter coffee, but it still has like a good like drinkability to it. So it's not like, you know, its own ordeal. Yeah. So even looking at the grinds now, I see that it's relatively lighter. So like, I would start with 208 water, or 209 in this case. But yeah, and that water would cool off relatively significantly really fast, especially like using the origami and V60s and all that kind of stuff. So I tend to like do a little divot in the middle just so that way I can like saturate the bottom of the brew bed faster, just so that way everything's a little bit more consistent. So I'm starting off with a 21 gram dose, and I will be finishing at a 350 gram brewed coffee. So it's just like enough for like your average cup. Blooming, maybe I'll like go more into blooming or whatever, but blooming is its own ordeal. It's sort of like, it matters how long you do it, why you do it that way, like, you know, all these things like sort of like pertain to like, that's like its own video in itself. But for this, it smells really good. For this, I would bloom with 50 grams of coffee. 50 grams of water. Yeah, for like about 30 seconds, 45 seconds. You can just sort of feel it out depending on like the coffee or whatever, like how old it is. You can sort of look at it after you brew enough, and you can notice, or you can even smell too. Like it'll smell like kind of acidic or whatever until it's time for you to pour again. Sorry, it's distracting. So, after the initial bloom of 50 grams, I then have a second pour of about 70. So, I like to do the second pour, or I like to front load the coffee a little bit more, like on the second pour or on the third pour or something like that. I just find that it gets a little bit of a better flavor, and it tends to be sometimes sweeter, sometimes more balanced, sometimes more like, it's honestly, it just depends on the coffee itself. So like, what may work for this coffee may not work for another. What may work for this coffee, you may not want another one too. So like, yeah. But like, now that I'm finished pouring, I can talk more like intently. Yeah, like, you know, so after the first pour, I pour a second pour of 70 grams or whatever, and then I will have a third pour of 60 grams, a fourth pour of 60 grams, and then one final fifth pour of 60 grams, I think. Whatever adds up to 350. Yeah. Honestly, like, in my opinion, I think brewing is something that we've sort of made too complicated because you're pouring water over just like crushed pieces of coffee. But because we're pouring water over just crushed pieces of coffee, like certain things matter even more, you know? But it may not be the things that you necessarily think. I tend to focus a lot on like your brew ratio. So like for this one is like a 1 to 16.6. I just know that we roast a lot of our coffee to like sort of like brew for that ratio. So like I know it works better with a lot of our coffees, but like I know different roasters, like they do different like ratios, and like their coffee may taste better at different ratios or whatever. Like ratios and all of that kind of stuff, like it's a really significant deal for coffee brewing and like just flavor, because like something may taste good at different ratios. Like you can definitely get it to taste good at different ratios, but they'll taste slightly different. They'll have different characteristics you may or may not like. It's very, very interesting. Yeah, so let me dump out this drink real quick. So at the end of it, not very much of a brew guide, not very specific with a lot of things, just sort of wanted to talk and like get the first thing done, because like I figured, you know, the only way to actually be able to do it and get better is just to do it. I only poured a little bit because I wanted to cool down relatively faster. That's why I'm swirling it. It's like a tiny bit of a cup, and I just want to taste it, and like I'll give my thoughts on if it was right or not. This is my first time brewing this batch specifically at home, but it was tasting pretty good at work, so like I bought a bag, brought it home, yeah, just to try. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's actually really creamy, more so than I was expecting. It's almost like, I don't know if you guys ever tried those like strawberry cream candies. Imagine that, but like with a lemon orange flavor instead of strawberry. It kind of tastes like one of those. It's kind of candy-ish. It's kind of like, I would say this is relatively, because it's coarser, I never actually measured the TDS, or not the TDS, the extraction levels. It may actually be lower in extraction, which is making, but like lower in extraction, but like a little bit like more of a longer brew for B60 or whatever. But like, I think it's sort of not as intense, not as like acidic, not as like in your face as like how I tried it like at work, which is pretty good. I mean, like I tend to like I wouldn't say weaker, but like less like in your face-ish coffee. Like I like to taste the coffee for like the green, for like the terroir, sort of like the subtle nuances. Honestly, I just sort of like coffee like how I like my tea. So if your coffee tastes like tea, I'll probably like that. But this is pretty good. Yeah, actually really good. So I'll finish this. But yeah, with this, like, I guess given the time, like I do sort of want to maybe like do more things like this. Of course, like I'll have like a better setup, a better like flow. Like I'll try to like not ramble as much. Right now, I literally just have my phone propped up by two coffee cups and a chair, pointing at this. And yeah, I'm not in my kitchen. I'm in my living room because like my kitchen is like pretty dirty right now, and like it's not a good look for your first time, right? But yeah. Other than that, like coffee's good. Oh, questions. I'm sure the really important question that a lot of people have been asking has been, is this a dog bone that I have? It's like, yeah, a doggy treat, whatever. this is for her over there. She is staring at me very intently because I have this in my hand. If I didn't have this in my hand, she would literally be all over me, like jumping up and down or whatever, because like she really likes attention. Do you want this? Come here. All right. There you go. Yeah. So if you watched this all the way through, good for you. If you didn't, like, I mean, you're lost, I guess. Yeah, I'll try to like be more thoughtful, try to be more like stream of conscious, like, because like I really think that's pretty cool, because like I notice certain things as I pour, and like I'm thinking about it, but like, I'm not vocalizing them, and I feel like my method of thinking, as far as like when it comes to coffee, is kind of weird compared to like, you know, when I express it to other people, like they're thinking that's kind of weird. So like I do want to like vocalize how I got there more or whatever. But yeah.